In the analysis video, we came up with this flowchart as our plan for how to solve this task. So now let's try to implement this, and I'll start with creating a new file and saving it as a Python file and giving it a reasonable name. I'll name it lecture 3 task 6.py. And when I have my file here, I'm going to start doing what we came up with here. So the first thing I'm going to do is to declare these 3 variables and assign them the values that we have come up with. And let's just stop for a moment here. There are some guidelines for how you should name your variables in Python and in other languages. But in some cases, like here when you have a formula that you're implementing, sometimes you do abbreviate from those rules just so that you can name your variables the same as you have in your formula. And that is what I'm doing here. So we have declared these, and now it's time for us to calculate the future value, or the final value that we will have. How much money will we have after all these years? And how do we do that? So the final value is equal to, and we're going to look at our formula here. So I'm going to write the same thing. How much money do we have now? Times 1 plus r. And that's going to be raised to the power of n. So first calculate this, 1 plus r, raise that to the power of n, and then multiply all of that with PV, our present value, or our starting value. So we have done this step, and then we go on to display the final value. So we're going to print it. And I think when I'm going to print, I'm going to use one of these F strings. And what should we print? After n years, so after 20 years, you will have, and I'm just going to specify here that what we are displaying is the future value. And we want to display the future value variable. Or maybe we should say kronors, so we know what currency it is. So let's try to run it. And we see after 20 years you will have this amount, but it doesn't look so nice. There are so many decimals here. So let's try to fix that. And if you want to format your output when you're using F strings, this is how you do it. So you set a colon, and then you say that I want 2 decimals, and it is a floating point. So if we run it again, we see that now it looks a little bit nicer. All right, so let's see. Is this what we were trying to do? If we look at our flowchart here, we see that we declared 3 variables corresponds to this. Then the calculation is the next step. And finally, we do display the future value on this line here using a print with F strings. So it looks like we have solved the problem. So what can we learn from this? If we look back, we saw that when we started this task, it might have been a bit scary. There was some math in there and there were numbers, but when we followed the steps, we managed to come up with this solution, and then implementing it from that flowchart was pretty straightforward from what we had here. So don't underestimate the value of coming up with a plan before you start your implementation. And if we look at what we have in the code, we see that, all right, we can raise to the power of using 2 stars. So that's something new that we haven't seen before, and we have practiced using f strings, which are a convenient way of printing stuff.